because I didn't know who I was, because I was trying to be what I thought I was supposed to be. It was killing me. It was strangling me from real identity, that I'm bawling on the ground, thanking God.
Crying from relief, not out of fear, not that you were caught, out of relief. Welcome to the Rethreading Lives podcast, where we talk about how to take your threads of harm and through the rethreaded process, transform them into something that actually helps you reach your potential. We'll talk with different leaders in our city and our country and find out what they're doing. You'll walk away from listening to this podcast with useful insights and captivating stories on how you yourself can rethread your life and your business. I'm Kristen Keene, and this is the Rethreading Lives podcast. Hello, listeners. Today, I'm so excited to welcome guest Mark McGuire. He has lots and lots of titles, so I'm going to let him tell his titles in a couple of minutes. But I met Bishop McGuire like a year-ish ago, probably. Yeah. Travis, who, if you're a listener, he was on like episode number 8, and Travis and Mark go to the same church, and Travis is like, you really need to meet Bishop Mark, and I think you guys could do some work together. That's how we met, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. And then we got to go to have lunch at the Potter's House Cafe. What's it called?
The Bistro, the Soul Food Bistro.
Oh, the Soul Food Bistro. I know. I like our meetings
at the Bistro.
Yes. And Mark, I'm just going to let Mark tell what he does. He does, so much, and not even just so much in Jacksonville, but so much all over the country. So I'm going to let him give a summary of kind of like what his life is like right now.
Well, obviously a happily married man to Dr. Angela McGuire. I do a little work with her consulting firm, ISV Consulting, but my foundational work is I'm the Director of Discipleship, Outreach, and Evangelism at the Potter's House, where Bishop Von McLaughlin and Lady Narlene McLaughlin are the senior leaders there. And
I'm going to just pause for a second for our listeners. The Potter's House is the largest and most influential, traditionally, African-American church in Jacksonville? I think it is. I'm going to say that. The Potter's House has had a huge influence on Jacksonville, Florida, and the areas of justice in, so many ways. The Potter's House is influencing Jacksonville to get people to move to action. I love it. Okay. I'll brag on you.
Well, for sure. Influence in education and economics with over 270 employees, probably the second largest employer on the West Side, other than, the services, and just doing a lot of work in the community. So when I moved here, I started off as a youth pastor, working with youth and teens and bringing some structure to an already great situation. And then after COVID, transitioned to just Director of Discipleship, Outreach, and Evangelism, where it's really my niche. It's just really being amongst the people and just sharing the love of God, the gospel, and life, and doing a lot of peer support. And I won't call it counseling, but just some mentoring and helping people just kind of cope with some things. I think my vein in life is being a hope pusher. And so I believe my gift is exhortation. And somehow it calls me to preach and pastor as well, but that's my gift. So at the Potter's House, that's where we just began to thrive. And just because the program just ended, but formally, I was also the director of both the North Side and the West Side for a program in the city of Jacksonville called Cure Violence Jacksonville. And it was a, natural move for me when it was made available. I have 2 organizations. Both are called MVP, but one is the North Side MVP and one is West Side MVP. And the MVP stands for Manifesting Violence Prevention. So our violence prevention work started in Dayton, Ohio, some 20 years ago. Gang intervention, mentoring, just trying to, arbitrate animosity to some degree, mediation, and giving wraparound services. That was the biggest thing that I thought was when I came out with the dream and the vision, just trying to marry intervention with wraparound services for a different population. And so it just kind of worked. I had an opportunity to take a group to Dayton, Ohio, March of 2020. Showed them what I did and let them meet some of the officials that I work with, the mayor, the governor, the police chief, the sheriff, judges, the president of the education committee and board there in Dayton, Ohio. And when I got back, they were like, hey, there's an opportunity here. We need someone to step in. So we did the best we could for about 2.5 years until funding was a transition. And I think we made a big difference. I mean, I know we mediated several situations, and we were dealing with what the streets calls hitters and steppers. I mean, these are people who are doing the killing or most likely to be shot at, if not killed. A lot of gang intervention with the group that we had and hired workers who had come from that situation. It was a public health model, so you're utilizing individuals who really know the area and have been the problem once before, but just like a vaccine, they go back into the vein of the community.
Like a vaccine. I love that.
And deal with what we call an epidemic. We look at violence as an epidemic in that particular model. So, had a great opportunity to do that. I am the CEO and founder of what's known as the CARES Justice Institute Incorporated. It is a national organization, and we have a couple of different sites, and looking to open up a different site in another city. And CARE stands for Community Alliance for Restorative Education and Social. And then the words Justice Institute comes after it. And our job is to bring networks together, to bring policymakers together, to advocate for the inequity of opportunity, for where we see a disparity in racial equity, where we see civil rights violations. And then our other part of that job is we want to do leadership development. So when opportunity does come, we have individuals who are ready. We're creating a new culture for opportunity to arise. We don't want to go storming down the door at policymakers saying you've got to give everyone fair and just treatment and opportunity, and then there's no one for the opportunity. So, and of course, we're dealing with mostly the BIPOC community. So those individuals who are Black or people of color are our focus because of racism. And but we also look at other opportunities where we can step in and advocate and then create leadership development. So we deal with a couple of grants through the CARES Justice Institute that does just that, helps individuals, especially young people, teenagers and younger, to be acclimated with things that they deal with like trauma, anger, aggression, racism, systemic issues that have arisen since post slavery. And that are generational and kind of institutionalized. And so our job is to help them navigate through that, through different processes. So excited to do that. So along with the work with the church, it kind of works in hand because we're just out here helping people to get along in life, and then always willing to share the gospel because that's just who I am. And then last but not least, as a consultant, I am a compliance and program administrator for an organization now called Families of Slain Children. Name is FOSSE. And so FOSSE, whenever FOSSE gets a grant or gets an opportunity to utilize some funds that maybe even be through a philanthropic gift, but earmarked for something specific, my job is to come in and make sure all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed for the organization so that they don't find themselves in some precarious situations. So,
see, I told you all it was going to be a long. You do a lot.
Yeah.
So the Rethreaded Process. This is a process that came about. I've worked with women for the past 20 years, walking with women coming out of human trafficking. And this has been kind of pulled out of all those experiences and interviewing multiple parties involved. And what we feel like is we've kind of have these ingredients, and I think they're universal. I think they're how God created us to heal. And these are the ingredients we need to heal and reach our potential. So at Rethreaded, that's what we talk about. We've all been through really great things, and we've been through really hard things. But sometimes the hard things are really hard and they collapse us and we can't hold life. So what the 5 ingredients are, the first is time, which I don't know how much you have of time. Time is your currency to heal, your currency to reach your potential. It's the only thing you can't get back. Community. These are the people who help you, love you. And also these are the people that hold you accountable to be who you're created to be. So they will love hard and speak truth. Purpose. This is the unique way that you bring love into the world. Vision. This is the belief that things can change in the future and you believe it so much that you'll take action. And openness. I do struggle with time, but I realize how much I struggle with openness as I sit in it for a while. And this is the ability to be honest about what is and be vulnerable with others about what is, about your thread or whatever it is. Because I kind of just be like, it's fine and it'll get better.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, what is? Sometimes that's really hard. And as I'm listening to you talk about gangs and violence and the restoration and the wraparound services, I can already hear the rethreaded process in there. And I know that our listeners, a majority of our listeners are people who care about the world and want to make it better. Do you want to start with your work now and work backwards, or do you want to start back and work forward?
Sometimes I don't know. I kind of go in both directions.
Oh, me too. Because I think both of us have the similar brains, actually. I know we do have similar brains.
So it'll work. But I want to say that what Travis said to you about me is exactly what he said to me about you. That I had to meet you. I had to know about Rethreaded. I had to have at least you on my prayer list, at least know what you're doing so that we know that work is there. And the reason being is because I didn't jump right into gang intervention. My biggest scope of service was going to deal with former addicts.
Yeah.
Okay. And drug dealers and prostitution. And so that was the big deal in Ohio for me. It was drug addicts, prostitution, drug dealers. And then we got into this thing. It was kidnapping, like people were getting kidnapped. But then we heard about human trafficking. And so once I began to evaluate my life, my associates, my history, I realized how much a part I was of human trafficking throughout the tenure of drug dealing and the drug trade, not realizing that's what that was, because we justified that everyone was a participating cooperative participant, let me say, and not realizing that we were trapping them and then trafficking them in a way that we thought was formidable. Well, I guess it was for the culture. It's how it worked. And just one day sitting in church, right before I'm preaching, I'm pastor, still have a church in Dayton, Ohio that's called the Potter's House Dayton International Ministries. So I'm still the overseer of that church, of that fellowship. And one of my elders is the senior pastor now because I'm in Jacksonville. Just sitting there one day in the loft before I came down, it just broken because I realized of all that I was a part of in the negativity of the community. And it was much bigger than me being a drug dealer who was making money and trying to play Robin Hood in the community, that how much I was destroying the fiber of what I said I loved and what I knew my mother loved and what I knew my father loved. And so that brokenness kind of shifted the whole fellowship. And we went from just a charismatic, having church type of ceremonial group of individuals to really going back and trying to, there's a organization called Snatch. So I don't want to take their mantra, but really going back and snatching people out of the pits of hell. And I just believe that because when I give my testimony, I always say that God snatched me out. I didn't walk out. He snatched me out. I was begging to get out, but couldn't get out. I was stuck, and he snatched me out. So I don't have the testimony that one day I decided I'm tired of this and I just got on my laurels and pulled up my bootstraps and walked down the aisle and said, I yield, I yield. That's not my testimony. My testimony is God had to arrest me and snatch me and take away a lot of things in order for me to yield. It was a blessing. It wasn't a hurt. It was like, thank you. But it took all of that in order for it to happen.
Oh my gosh. I didn't know your story at all. So I first want to say and point out that, so the idea kind of with the Rethreaded process is that you pour into these ingredients, and as you pour into these ingredients, everything's connected. And once you pour into one, it kind of ignites everything. And I love that kind of a transformation in your leadership and who you were is when you were able to come to grips with what is. Yeah. I mean, that is brave and courageous and hurts. And and a lot of people don't do it.
Yeah.
Because it hurts. Oh, so that's really how you had revelations about this and it transformed you.
Yeah. I remember walking in the house before my mother passed when I was in high school, and it was a crazy day. These girls kept coming to the house looking for me, and my mother didn't know I was in the back of the house, decent sized house, middle class family. And I was hiding from these different girls because there was a girl there. And so, and I remember walking through there, and my mother looked at me and said, "You're handsomely horrible." And I thought about that, like, okay, that's an oxymoron, like handsomely horrible, like, and so, but when I thought about that day, I thought about her saying that. And I looked at my life. I was such a nice guy in the street. I was so cool to everybody. I had this Michael Corleone feel to me, though. But it was just so smooth. My nickname was Silk. I realized that day I was a beautiful monster. Oh. Like I was camouflaged as something really cool, really nice, easy to talk to. Silk will help you. Go talk to him, the girls, the guys, the prostitutes, the pushers, the dope fiends, the junkies. Everybody could come holler at Silk. Silk will make it okay. But I was killing everybody, including myself, and really had no idea until I had that breakdown that day to realize, there was no bad intention, but it was just bad behavior. And it did. It changed ministry for me. It helped me to run out. Rewind
a little bit.
Okay.
Tell me about your parents, your family, and how you kind of got on this path.
Great parents. Absolutely wonderful parents. Awesome. Grew up in Dayton, Ohio.
So Dayton, Ohio is your hometown?
It's my hometown. Okay. They both were poor. My mother lived in what was known as DeSoto Bass. We call it the Bass. You don't even say the, it's the Bass. And my father lived down the street. My mother had the great opportunity of babysitting one of the greatest R&B groups of all time called Heat Wave. And Johnny and Keith Wilder were, part of her babysitting regimen. And my dad, from a young age, was a sports phenom. He played varsity basketball from the 7th through the 12th grade. They allowed him to play. He was the first Black all-city quarterback in Dayton, Ohio. He became the first Black baseball player drafted from Dayton, Ohio. He had hitting with the ranks of the Mike Schmitz and the Steve Yeagers and all these guys that come through there. Just grew up in a time where he didn't have baseball at his high school, so he played with grown men. And since he was like 13, and he was the best on all the teams, everybody used him, everybody loved him. Then he got drafted. You imagine a kid getting drafted in a sport that you didn't play in high school. So he gets drafted in 1960. And he plays for the Baltimore Orioles organization. He got hurt a couple of times, but he was the AAA, which is like the jumbo shrimp, the next level down from Major League, all-star, all the time. Then he got traded to Chicago White Sox, and he played for the Tucson Toros. And by this time, I'm born, and so I get a little bit of that as a very young kid, maybe 1 or 2 or 3. And then he goes off to Japan and plays for the Hiroshima Carps for a couple years. Had a big opportunity to sign a multi-year, but he just didn't like the culture. You know, he was a hood kid. Good guy, never drank in Japan. And so he couldn't do it. And you got to figure this is 70, 73, 74. So he wouldn't have been a millionaire or anything like that. It would still been, you know, kind of mid-level, but he turned it down. And my mother at that time was working for General Motors. She was a foreman. So she made great money. You know, I think in the 80s or 70s, she was, you know, making $80,000, $90,000 a year. So we were a good middle-class family. And it was a blessing. I went to private school. I went to one of the top schools in the country called the Miami Valley School. It's one of the tops even now. And it was great. My cousin, his name is Raymond McGuire. He's the second Black entrepreneur on Wall Street several years in a row. He's like a phenom. You look up Raymond McGuire, and he is part of some of the greatest mergers in the history of America. Business mergers. He's just incredible. And so I followed right in his footsteps. And so
you grew up with a community of possibility.
Oh,
like it wasn't like I'm going to be stuck in this neighborhood. It's like I see people who are doing stuff and I'm going to do something.
Yeah, I was out in the neighborhood at 14. I mean, we weren't in the neighborhood anymore. We were living amongst some elite individuals, you know. And for an African-American woman from the hood, my mother's best friend was a little Jewish lady who sold real estate. And so even that was different. You know, I'll never forget Ellie Chayet. She was just the sweetest little lady.
And were your parents married?
Yeah. Never an issue.
Church going.
My dad became a deacon. My mother was a missionary president of the county. Just not that issue. She taught Sunday school for the senior class. But we were a funny family. It was laughter all the time. We were very comical. You know,
brothers and sisters.
Yeah, I got one younger brother.
Okay.
I had an older sister who was a foster sister, and so Betsy kind of took care of me until she got older and kind of, you know, just started wanting to do her thing. I'll say,
like your parents were also foster parents.
Yeah. Like it was, and then everybody lived at our house. So I've got 3 or 4 cousins who don't know life growing up outside of our home much. I mean, they were with us. They stayed in our house. And so it's just that situation. The situation I had with my mother is we would come home and you wouldn't know who you're stepping over if you went into the family room to watch TV, because someone would sleep on the floor, someone would sleep on the couch. Several times we've gone to my brother's room and someone's in his bed. You know, I don't know why, but she never did that to me, but she would always put someone in his room.
And then he would have to sleep with you.
And he'd have to come with me. And so we just didn't know. Sometimes we'd be pulling up and we's like, I wonder who's in the house now. Funniest story, lady tried to rob my mom. My mom was about 5'9", really big busted, beautiful lady, tall, you know, long legs, you know, but she was from the hood now. So lady tried to rob her at a grocery store. So my mom, you know, she tried to take her purse and run. So my mom wraps her up, hits her in the head a couple times. The lady's screaming and hollering. She chokes her, asks her why she's trying to rob her. And the lady said her family was hungry. So my mother said, you got one chance. I'm going to beat you like you've never been beat before, but I'm going to take you to your house. If there are not people there hungry, I'm going to beat you like you never known. And somehow she held this lady while she drove a Buick Electra 225 to this woman's house around the corner. When she gets there, it's deplorable. It smells horrible. 5 kids in there. Everybody's crying. Baby's crying. Bad diaper, everything. My mother puts everybody in the car. They lived at our house for a week.
No way.
That was Betty Jane Bradley McGuire.
What's her name?
Betty Jane Bradley McGuire. That's my mom. We called her BJ.
BJ.
Yeah, BJ was incredible. Like, you just never knew who she was going to help next. Mm-hmm. And so just that was instilled in me. And like I said, I'm at private school now, but here's the flip side. We were one of the largest families in Dayton. So you've got this tremendous community of athletes and stars. And, you know, I know they probably would never love for me to say this part, but I've been saying it for 25 years now. But we also had a group of gangsters. So on my dad's side of the family, we had connection with gangster. On my mom's side of the family, we had this connection with drug abuse and alcoholism. And so I was getting the best of three worlds: the religious, professional world, the gangster world, and then the whole criminal drug abuse world. So the gangster world and the other world, they're both criminal, but one is from the standpoint of the ones that are making the money, and the other ones are the ones who are, dealing on the bottom side of crime and drug abuse and alcoholism. And so, and then I'm going to private school. So I'm trying to figure all this out. And then I found out that rich white kids get high too, and rich white kids party too. And so it's everywhere. And so then I became a conduit on all sides. And then I learned how to become this middleman for everything. And then that's what ruined me. That's where Silk was birthed. I started getting high around 13.
13.
Yeah, so I was at Central State University, Upper Bound. My cousin was on campus already, and he was becoming a Kappa, and he left the room. And in his room was some paraphernalia and some stuff, and I found it. And I wanted to be big time, so I used it while they were gone. When they came back, I was wasted.
What did you use?
Marijuana and cocaine.
Okay.
So I was wasted.
At 13.
Powder cocaine. Now, I knew how to use powder cocaine because of movies. I saw people sniffing. We watched everybody black back in those days. We watched Superfly and all the Dolomite movies. And so I knew that. And then I had a drug addict uncle that lived with us, who was a heroin addict intravenously, which I thank God I never tried that. But I didn't try it because it seemed like he just looked too stupid when he was high. Like, why do you want that high? So I didn't use heroin. But I did see the cocaine usage. So I tried it high, and then everybody thought it was cool. I knew how to play cards really well because living in Japan, my mother taught me how to play cards when I was 6. So I was pretty smart. I caught on, so I could beat them and things like 500 and Tunk, and learn how to play spades. And it was amazing. And so I just became this cool kid. I went to private school. I was a good athlete. I could run in the streets. I knew the lingo. I knew how to get high. We always loved girls. And so I found my niche because I think I had an identity crisis at the private school because there wasn't so many black people there. We had this little bitty bus that come pick us up. And so my friends would kind of laugh about the little bus and the white people. And here comes white Mark. Here comes white Mark. So it was this, I called it AIDS. I called it an acquired identity deficiency syndrome. Just like regular AIDS, you don't die from AIDS, but you die from complications of AIDS. Well, I didn't die because of deficiency of identity, but I died because of the complications. I was going to die because of the complications of an identity deficiency, because I didn't know who I was, because I was trying to be what I thought I was supposed to be. It was killing me. And so I had this spiritual AIDS that was after me because it was strangling me from real identity, from purpose and value that you talk about with Rethreaded, which is amazing. Vision. I lost vision. I had a dream as a kid, but it got thrown away.
What was your dream as a kid?
I wanted to be an architect first. And then I thought about being an engineer. Everyone said I should be a lawyer. Because I could talk really fast and I could make up a lie in a split second. And so everyone said I should be a lawyer. My cousin was a great businessman. So I just had this dream, and then it just all got lost.
So how far down did you go?
Oh.
For how many years?
Until I was 20. So 19... Shucks, what year was that? 1998? Was it 20? So it got so far that I had a lot of money. We had a lot of...
Did you graduate high school?
Graduated high school in 1986.
Did you stay successful? Like you were in addiction?
No. I graduated high school in 1986. Almost didn't graduate. Left private school, went to a public school to play basketball in a bigger arena. Did well. First person to ever to get into this school after their sophomore year the first person to transfer into this school and immediately start on a high level team. So I went from 1A to 4A, and I was a starter. I graduated. I wasn't the valedictorian or the salutatorian, but I did the graduation speech. They wanted me to do the graduation speech. I had so many classes already completed that I skipped school so much that I almost didn't graduate because of lack of attendance. Then had a baseball scholarship, basketball scholarship to 3 places, baseball scholarship to Florida A&M. So I came to Tallahassee, and before I could get through second semester, I'd found the group that I needed to find to get right back into the game. And I played baseball that first year, had a decent year, and then came home that summer. It escalated. By the time I came back my sophomore year, I was a full-blown drug dealing dope fiend.
Can you give us a picture of what that looks like, what that feels like?
Waking up every day late, missing class, getting high immediately, putting on cool clothes and going out on the campus and the streets of Tallahassee and making money and getting high all day, smoking weed all day, snorting cocaine all day, until it became smoking crack, and playing cards and hanging out with girls, and that's it. That was the day, every day. And
that time, is there a numbness? Is there anger? Is there peace? I mean, like, what do you know?
During that time, it was a numbness, and it was hurt. And so now I'm getting, some people say you're always trying to catch that first high. I wasn't trying to catch the first high anymore. I think at some point I was trying to numb the dilemma. Like, I'm stuck. And then I think that without real intention, I was hoping that one day when I did something, I passed out and didn't wake up. And so it was kind of that pseudo suicidal mentality, where I was too scared to do it, but just wanted to escape because I have blown everything. Like, I was Mark McGuire coming out of high school, and now it was like, man, look at him. And so instead of being like, hey, that's Mark McGuire, people were saying, wow, that was Mark McGuire back in school. And I could see that, and I could hear that, and all the Kangos and all the gold chains and all the cool cars and all the leaning to the side and all the big music, couldn't hide it. And I was just a full-blown drug addict. It was horrible.
In this process, what we didn't talk about is that really what steals your potential more than anything is blame and shame.
It's blame.
We call it BS.
Yep, BS.
And it sounds like it sounds like you were drowning in it.
Yeah.
So this is also an insight that I want. So sometimes, sorry, I need to speak into the mic. Sometimes when people look at the guy with the big gold chains, the loud car, they don't see where you were at.
Yeah.
They don't see this broken kid.
Yeah.
I mean, gosh, and now that's why you can do this work.
Yeah. Full of pain.
It
was miserable. I was miserable. I was miserable. There was nothing about my life that was exciting. I looked for times where I could laugh sober, but it was so much shame and so much addiction that sober was hard to find. And so those moments where I could wake up and little cousins were coming to the house to hang out with me, and I knew I couldn't get high in front of them, they became my escape. And the next thing you know, my beeper go off. Or next thing you know, I get a phone call. Or the next thing you know, someone's ringing the doorbell. And here we go again. The bell has rung.
So in addition to like carrying this blame and shame, then there's also this constant, is there a constant is there fear there too?
Every day.
Am I going to get caught? Am I going to get caught? Or is that even?
Yeah,
every day.
I'm getting caught. I'm going to jail. I'm going to get shot. Somebody's going to try to rob me. Mm-hmm. Which one of my friends is it? Complete paranoia. But then I also had this dying responsibility that I cannot let this happen to my brother. So he was my heart. And like I see sibling rivalry and I see sibling, it's impossible to conceive that for me. Because this was Betty Jane's son, this is her baby. And so she had him just before we went to Japan. And so when my dad would be gone all day for baseball, she would be out on the little rice farm and picking up vegetables. And I don't know, she had to do it if that was what we were going to eat, or she just was out there. My mother was crazy. Let me tell you, she was a good mix of Joyce Meyer and Lucille Ball. Like my mom was the perfect mix of Joyce Meyer and Lucille Ball. Throw a little T.D. Jakes and Richard Pryor in there, and you got Betty Jane. You got her. She was the funniest woman alive. Like anyone that I introduced to that says my mom, the first thing they'll say is she's the funniest woman ever alive. So I raised my brother. So he was my son.
What was the age difference? 5
years. Mm-hmm. So, just at 5. His birthday's in March. I'm in May. But so for me to think, he did everything I did. Like everything I did, he mimicked. Everything on the court, everything on the baseball field, everything to the girls, everything with the jokes. I was the baby Martin Lawrence of the family. So I was always cracking jokes, always making people laugh. So he became that. And we picked that up from my mother. To think that he would follow in my footsteps, if something happened to him, I wouldn't know what I would do. So if he looked like something was wrong, I was over top of him. Mm. If his friends looked funny, I would threaten him behind his back. If people looked at him funny, I was going to see him. There was a time at Wright State University where one of the basketball players got into a big deal with one of the big drug killers in our area. And it got out that if whoever he sees in a Wright State jacket, he was going to kill him. And I knew my brother had the prettiest jacket on campus because I got it. I took a group of people up to Wright State and I made an announcement, like in every dorm. If something happens to Chris McGuire, I'm tearing up everything till I find out who did it. And eventually the guy who wasn't on campus, we saw each other at the library and it was a standoff. And then finally someone that knew both of us said, hey, what's going on? Told us who he was looking for. I told them to go get him so that they can squash it while we're here. And because if something happens to my brother, none of us get out of here. And that's what I said. And they fixed it. And I think that was my first gang intervention because of my little brother. Wow. But it was that kind of protection, that type of love. But it was also that type of pain that I was leading. Mm-hmm. I was modeling for him the worst person possible. But I looked so cool doing it that when all of my little buddies wanted to come running with me, and, we had a gang, and the gang was so suave that our gang name was the main attraction. Like, it was the dumbest thing. We had a cool name for a gang because we were all that cool. We were the coolest kids in school and around the city. So, the 13 of us, and we didn't vandalize and some of those things that you see, but we sold drugs and we got hot.
So is part of the gang mentality is because maybe internally people are struggling with blame and shame.
Missing family. Missing family and community. Because
they're kind of isolated themselves. So here we're going to be with people who are the same, but I'm not going to ever admit.
Yeah. And there's love.
What's going on?
And it's a lack of love. Mm-hmm. Because it's a funny love, but if you're in a real gang or if you're in a real group, that's real love. Like that's brotherhood. Like that's that old, I'm gonna cut my wrist, you cut your wrist. We'll do the blood oaths. We'll do the pinky swears. I mean, this is serious stuff. Now, what you see now sometimes, they turn on each other so quick. I don't know what you call it, but back in those days, when you said that we were a group, we're dying together group. Like we love each other, and the parents knew it. Even the ones that didn't realize what we were totally up to. They treated us like family. Hey, everybody's mom was, hey, mom. Hey, Mama Betty. Hey, Mama Johnny. Hey, Mama Jane. Hey, Mama Lisa. Hey, Mama Peggy. Hey, Mama Barb. It was that. They in this basement. They're downstairs. They're over there. They've been in the backyard. Y'all better not get in no trouble. I'm gonna whoop all of y'all. I mean, it was that. And then when we grew up in that culture, it was even, I need to whoop all y'all. Y'all all know better than this. But it was because we were brothers, and so many of them are dead and not doing well at all. There's maybe 2 that are okay, and one is not in the gospel like I wished he was. He was my best friend, but he's doing good, in life, from that standpoint. But just want to see him saved and really committed to Christ. But the rest of them are gone.
So there was a community, people who helped each other, loved each other, maybe not, in some ways, held each other accountable to be who they're created to be.
Yeah, well, or who we thought we were created to be.
And that's probably the falseness of the gang, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the trick of the enemy.
Yeah.
To not only give you that love, but to make you comfortable that was the right thing to do. Like, people on their deathbed have looked up to me and said, man, thank you. Like, you were my brother. Like, without you, I would have been nothing. And I'm looking at them in the gospel saying, because of me, you almost became nothing. Mm. You saw my life transform. You saw me come home. You came to visit the church. I don't know if you're really saved or not, but you came to the altar because of, it's got to be real. Max doing this, it's got to be real. But you didn't live the life of a Christian, but hopefully you embrace Christ, to get to the throne. And that's all I can hope. And you're thanking me for the life, not the life of salvation. You're thanking me for the life that you thought I helped you enjoy, when really it was a life of destruction. Mm. And so, but the motive was right. It just, the whole operation was horrible. So
it's like when in human trafficking, there's 4 stages, and the 4th stage is immersion, where a woman is in it. She's kind of lost hope that it's going to change. And it's normalized. It's normalized. So it sounds like that's similar to a process. I mean, that's like a human process, right? There's stages, and once you get to this stage, it's normal.
It's normal.
And you don't even know, our women don't even know they're a victim, right? Because this is my life.
Yeah, I can see 3 girls now that, back then we called them personal favors, where you could come get a favor. But there were a couple girls that we kept pretty, at the spot, because when the guys would come to make the deal, that's how we made the deal sweeter, and we knew she was using, she didn't have a problem. Who's coming today? Oh man, I hope not him, and but
and that was normal in your world.
That was normal. And my nickname, I don't know if I can say it on the podcast because it has a bad word in it.
Do it.
I can do it?
Do it.
They called me Captain Save-A-Ho. Because I wouldn't do a personal favor, because I had too many female cousins and a couple that were on drugs. So I never did them. But what I would do is I would take them in the room with me and let them get high. And I would just hang out and talk, maybe lay on the bed, maybe turn the TV on. And they would even say, Silk, please, let me make you okay. No, I don't do that. I don't do that. And I just didn't do it. And I was also scared of an STD too. So but I didn't do that. So when I come out, they'd be like, they'd look and guys would tease, oh, that's Captain Save-A-Ho. He ain't in there doing nothing, letting them get high for free. But that's what I did that. And so they would love to see me coming. When I came to those houses, when I stopped by to pick up money or to drop something off, they would love to see me coming, and they would just run to me and say, Silk, oh, please come on, go in the room with me. And so they was like, oh, knock it out. But then when I come out, somebody would see me like, oh man, that's Captain Save-A-Ho. He didn't do nothing. But in my mind, I'm helping them because they don't have to do anything for this, but I'm actually trapping them because now they're going to have to stay in that space. And I know what that space is, and I know what they're going to do. And sometimes I felt sorry for them. And sometimes I honestly, I didn't feel sorry or devious. It just,
that's what it's what is.
It's what is. Yeah. And that's what it was. And so it was like, all right, I'm gone. Y'all take care of her. Y'all, She better be here when I get back, but it might be days. And then when I get back, sometimes they're gone, sometimes they're there, sometimes they're walking the street. Sometimes I'd see them walking the street. I throw them in the car. I take them somewhere, get them a room. But it was human trafficking. Yeah. So when I got hit with it, when it hit Montgomery County, that it was going on in Ohio, and I literally asked somebody to come over and explain it. And, a couple of weeks later, I'm sitting upstairs in this little area I call the Prophet's Quarters, and I'm just sitting there, and I just was broken, And then I had to think about it, that even a couple of my cousins, I did that. Thinking this is the life they want. You don't want nothing else here. Just don't take wooden nickels, is what I'd say. Don't take no wooden nickels. Make him do right by you. You don't get no crumbs. Don't do nothing stupid. You ain't got to do nothing on favor. They got to pay. They need to do what they got to do. You know what I mean? And I'll send some guys by this that'll do right. But I didn't see it that way. I really didn't. I thought I was helping because this is the life they wanted, or this is the life they were stuck in, and it's the life we had. And I just saw one of those cousins the other day who taking my wife to date and introducing her to a cousin of mine who we call Auntie, and then the other actual cousin. And, first thing she said when she walked in is like, boy, Mark, you used to have wads of money. So my wife looked at me, was like, that was my fame. And it was like, we laughed, but it was like, hey, that's, but when I saw her and I left, I said, but you know where I'm at now. You know what I'm doing? She said, oh, yeah, and I love it. We listen to your messages, listen to your sermons, listen to you preach. We love you. We miss you, so it's like.
Is she sober and clean?
I think she's not had, I think she told us 6 weeks, maybe 6 months. I can't remember what she said exactly. My wife would probably remember more.
So that was the side that's
yeah.
It is like the sides of your family, addiction and the gangs and
yeah.
And then this core goodness. This is what another part of the Rethreaded process is learning how to hold, we call it the paradox, which is the paradox of life. The pair of ducks, the yuck duck and the yay duck. We all have them, but how do you hold them at the same time? And it sounds like, and I know that part of healing is being able to hold that.
Yeah.
This is the yuck and the yay, and you get stuck in yuck.
Yeah.
And you were stuck, and then, because you couldn't hold it. But now, I think that's a process to learn how to hold it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, but I think
Christ
God,
and mercy.
Oh, there's no question without the power of Christ and the Holy Spirit. I don't know how people who are not saved, live in the space that I live in and really help and feel empowered. But it's great that they do it. I couldn't do it. I have to have the Holy Ghost in order to maintain the sanity and the just, fight through it, the absorption that happens when you're in those spaces with people, and just the spiritual pull that you feel, in that. And then, of course, the grit and the deliverance and the grace and all of that, not to go back.
Yeah.
So
it's incredible.
Yeah, because that was my life. Like when I got arrested, the day before, or a couple of days before we got arrested, my testimony is watching TBN. I've got this shoebox full of marijuana. I've got this plate full of powder cocaine, and I'm drinking J. Roget out of a bottle.
Watching
TBN.
Christian, which is a Christian station for our listeners.
Trinity Broadcasting Network. And I would always put it on there because when I go to my mom's house, she had cable, we'd watch it. She loved to see the people on there. And
Mark, this is like the most amazing paradox.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You got the yuck and the yay in the same moment.
And not only did I watch that, I watched the stories back in the day too. So I was a gangster watching The Guiding Light, As the World Turned, The Bold and the Beautiful. I knew them all.
This is awesome.
Mrs. Chancellor was my girl.
Because you were home. That was probably your chill time.
I was kicking it, and they couldn't call me. I wasn't leaving until 3:30. When the Bold and Beautiful go off, okay, we can get it until the next morning. But hey, once 12,
this is my favorite fact of me so far.
Yeah. So when Price is Right comes on until the Bold and Beautiful goes off, Oh yeah,
Price is
I
Right.
started my day with Bob Barker. That was it. Bob and the girls. Yeah, that was me. And so, but I'm looking at Smokey Robinson on the TV, and I've seen Smokey Robinson high because I had a cousin that was just in the entertainment stuff. So we went to a bunch of concerts out of town. I've seen Smokey Robinson high. And so, and I know they told me that he was in a room where they were getting high. And he's on TBN. And I'm like, what is Smokey Robinson doing on TBN? This is so fake. Like, he gets high. Yeah, no, he's not going to sing a gospel song. So I turn it up. And he's telling his story of deliverance and salvation and how God saved him and how he thought he would never get saved and how so many people in the music industry now are getting saved because of his lifestyle, because of what he did. And now he's saved and all these people are getting saved. And I just bawled. And I said, God, if you can save Smokey Robinson, you can save me. I want it. I want what my mother has. I want it. The devil's so strategic. Like 10 minutes later, the beeper goes off and the biggest deal of the century is we're ready for it. Take a deep breath. I get these other signs over the next couple of days that I should not do this deal. April Fool's Day comes. So Monday, all of this went back through my head and I told my wife, getting ready to make a deal. I'm at Perkins. I'm looking up at the hotel that really nobody's supposed to be in. I'm actually negotiating with a guy who's buying the hotel to revamp it. And so we're trying to figure out how much money we're going to try to launder to him to get him to buy this hotel to revamp it. I look up and I notice curtains moving. And I look up again, I tell the guy who's with me, whose money we have, I'm saying, did you see, don't be obvious, but look up and see if the curtains move again. And the guy that's sitting with me says, there's a camera in that curtain. So we paged my cousin inside of Perkins and said, no deal, we're going home. 911. So we go home. So when we get home, we say, this is not going to happen. So we explain it why. We call the people and say, hey, we can't do it. We almost got busted. So the guy who's the agent fakes like we saved his life. So he's so happy. He's ready to make this deal even sweeter. He's going to come back next week. This guy comes back the next week. He's sitting in Perkins. Now, my mom goes to this Perkins all the time, but we're not thinking she's going to go. So she's selling this stuff called Relive, right? It's a powder shake, nutrient stuff. So she's selling it everywhere. So they would have these big meetings and then they'd go to Perkins. So she's got this big meeting over at General Motors, introducing it to a bunch of people. Next thing we know, she comes home, she's laughing, talking, and she says, I met this weird guy, big black guy, muscle guy. He got the weirdest name. Name was Guido. And so my eyes got this big because that's who we were meeting, was this guy named Guido. So my mom just met this guy in Perkins that we're getting ready to go buy 10 kilograms of cocaine from. If that isn't God saying, don't do this, I don't know what is. But we decided to make the time later. We go to do it and the police come and I'm on the ground crying. And it's ATF. I told my wife it was alphabet soup. ATF, IRS, SSA, DEA, Sheriff's Department, DPO, Dayton Police. It had so many alphabets, like alphabet soup. I was so relieved that I'm bawling on the ground, thanking God.
Crying from relief, not out of fear, not that you were caught, out of relief.
And the lady puts her foot on my neck and said, oh no, McGuire, don't be a punk now, Mr. Gangster. You can't start crying now. You can cry when you get downtown. She thinks I'm getting ready to tell her on it. You can cry when you get downtown. She had no idea. Mm-hmm. She had no idea. Those persons might as well had wings on. It was over. I had every excuse I needed to stop. It was over. And that was the end of that life.
So when you came out, did you have to go to a treatment or?
Yeah, I did went
Yeah.
to treatment, all right. 5 years in the penitentiary.
5 years.
Yeah.
And you served all 5.
Yes, ma'am. It was federal time.
Federal time.
Yep. 64 months, actually.
In Ohio.
No.
No.
First, they drove me around, then they flew me around, and then I started in Ashland, Kentucky, and then I went to Lexington, Kentucky, and then I ended up in Manchester, Kentucky.
Manchester, Kentucky, in a federal prison.
In a federal prison.
We need a longer podcast.
Yeah. And now my sentencing judge is the president of the board of CARES Justice Institute. He's an older Jewish man still on the federal bench right now. His name is Walter Rice.
So, how's your family in this?
My brother and I are closer than we ever been. My mom passed away while I was incarcerated.
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
yeah. We can't even go there.
Okay,
unless you want me crying and stuff. I mean,
nope.
I can cry. I don't mind, but
Nope.
but that's gosh. And then my dad in 2008 had a stroke. He's had 5 strokes, 6 heart attacks, and but the last time we went to see him, I told him I was getting ready to start playing tennis again. First thing he always does is looks at my stomach. And then I asked him, did he ever play tennis? My wife asked him, did he ever play tennis? And he gave us about, these 3 tennis stories, how he played tennis and beat everybody. And the girl went home crying one day because she couldn't beat him in tennis. I don't know if he's telling the truth or not at this point. But he walks around very slowly. He, sometimes he'll fall. So he uses a walker and a wheelchair sometimes. Very funny. Short term, he's dealing with dementia. But if you go back enough years and start talking about baseball, he's got it. He's got it. And so he's finally, he's 41. So he's 83. And so he's at a care facility. But he's doing good. Got to see him in a suit Sunday for Easter. So I wasn't there, but they sent me pictures. So.
And your brother never went in your path?
No, never drank, never smoked, never sold drugs. I played basketball for University of Miami University. Went overseas, played pro ball for a few years. Had his jersey retired and made the Hall of Fame in his high school. And awesome. He had a chance to go back. This has always been a sticking point for me too. I'm not going to cry though. He had a chance to go back on a pretty decent contract when it became pretty obvious that my mother was terminal. And because I wasn't there to take care of her, he said he had to stay with her. So he denied his contract. And so.
Stayed with your mom. Yeah.
So I've always tried to make sure I took care of him. He didn't need for anything. He gave his life up for her because I wasn't there. And, it's just, I felt bad. But he's a brilliant guy. And so he's doing well. And he does some mental health stuff. He's like over a whole section of the city when we're talking about kids, dealing with suicide or people dealing with suicide. So he's running from hospital to hospital, doing some mental health stuff. So I'm very proud of him. So he's doing good.
So how have these threads help you create this work to go back?
It's the education for ministry. It's the OJT. It's the experience. It's the certifications. It's all of that. And I know I still get those in the natural. And I laugh sometimes. I'm sitting in class like, oh, that's what the technical term is for that stuff that I'm doing. Or that's why you do this, because the Holy Spirit has really navigated me in this space and it's been amazing. But it's the impetus. It's why I do it. It's there's nothing else out there. This is my purpose. There's nothing else out there. I've tried to do businesses. I've owned professional basketball teams. I mean, and we had the right models. I mean, we did it right. But it never really works. It's never that. And I didn't have my wife then either. She's pretty brilliant, but it never worked. But I've come to grips and understanding that that's not it, that God doesn't want me in that world, even though that's a great space. Business is one of the 7 mountains. So it's a great space to be in. It's just not where God wants me. And where he wants me is in the community service space, where I can impact people who are hurting, who are people who need to be empowered, transformed, have transformation, and have that hope. Like I always say, I'm your hope shot. Like if God can fix any part of my life, I'm not going to say I'm fixed, but if he can fix any part of my life and give me enough to where someone would refer you to me, or I seem beneficial to you, or I'm doing something that's going to help you evolve, if he can do that for me, you got a greater chance than you can ever think of, because this kind of happened supernaturally for me, because I denied all the help that God tried to send me. And it had to happen supernaturally while I was in prison, while I was reading the Bible, while I was sitting there thinking, while I was writing my vision down, while I was thinking of programs, while I was trying to figure out who I knew when I got back home that I'd connect with, who were all gone, and except for some mentors. And I had to kind of find that space. Now you don't have to. You can trust that I've been there. All the people that told me hadn't really been there. I've been there. Like, you can't give me a story other than doing something homosexually or doing something intravenously. There's nothing else that you can bring to me that I didn't be a part of, saw, or some kind of way it happened. And even those two things, I've sat and watched it at a high level to where I don't experience it, but I saw and observed those and they explained to me what that was. And when I say homosexually, I'm saying male situation, because obviously the lifestyle that we had, we saw a whole lot of stuff with females, and and not being chauvinistic, but for us, that wasn't a problem. That wasn't a problem for us. So, but there's nothing so sometimes Bishop's preaching and he'll say things like, you've been to jail, you've been divorced, you've been an alcoholic, you've been on drugs, I'm like, don't tell my whole story. Just leave it alone. Just say you had some sin. You're up there preaching me. You don't have to preach me. And because it was all of that.
So can you tell me a story about a time that you had an intervention? Do you have a story from Jacksonville that you could tell about when you went out and intervened and what that looked like? And what do you say? What do you do?
Yeah. So I'll just use a story where a gentleman was just tired, suicidal, just ready to go. And but we've always been taught that if you're suicidal and angry, if you're suicidal, you're homicidal. And so we've got to protect somebody too before they go. And so it was just a matter of getting a phone call, getting in my car, going out at night. And
what time in the night is this?
1 in the morning.
1 in the morning, and it's just you, or you have your people?
No, it's just me.
Just you.
Yeah. And meeting a person in a space with a firearm, and they're broken, and they're weeping and they're crying. And, back when I was 35 and 40 and doing this, I was invincible. But at 50, 52, maybe, 50, 51, this wasn't an easy conversation, because this person's bigger, and they've moved now, but they're doing pretty good. But they were really upset. Female situation, another male situation, drugs, obviously. And I don't even know them this long. I just got to Jacksonville, but I just used all that I had learned, all that I had experienced, and the power of God to just really talk them off of this ledge, to remind them that, first of all, I don't know your theology, but I know you say you love Jesus, but you haven't fulfilled your purpose yet. And he knows the tree by the fruit that it bears. You're not bearing the fruit of this tree you were born to be. And so I'm not saying you're going to hell, but man, why take this chance that you don't get to see Jesus because you out here tripping over something that's replaceable? And we went through a lot of things. And so in these moments, I lean on my spirituality. I lean on the truth of the scriptures, because that's where the power is. And so finally I said, the Bible says, man, when your heart fails you, God is greater than your heart. And his eyes opened. And he asked me, God can fix my heart. I said, oh my God. Now, once he said that, I got him now. And so, but it's a long road to recovery, because it's a call every day. It's make sure you're okay. Show up to your service, come meet me at the Potter's house. It's all of those things. And so, but it's a very sensitive moment, because again, if you're suicidal, you're homicidal when you're angry. And I know situations where people went to counsel people and they shot them and then shot themselves. And so, you just try to be very careful. I mean, dozens and dozens of drug use situations, tens and tens of times where a female is just tired of being the object of trafficking or prostitution or just drug abuse favors. And just so, most of that is Dayton, Ohio, most of that. When I get to Jacksonville, I had a couple of occurrences, one I just explained, but most of it was more conversations of serenity when we're in a good space, but people are just tired. And so you're counseling, or someone says, go talk to McGuire, or, Bishop, somebody wants to talk to you, or they call me PMAC at church. So PMAC, got somebody want to talk to, or I'm talking to a transient, on the street, at the mall, in the parking lot, or someone comes in the mall. I'm having those conversations in the bistro. It's amazing how many people in the bistro that I've talked to. I mean, there was one kid going to shoot the whole bistro up over some oxtails. Like, they gave away his oxtails and it was over. He'd been waiting on oxtails and it was over. Bishop and I laughed yesterday. He was getting ready to lose it over the oxtails. And I had to tell him, sir, listen, you're getting ready to take these 2 pork chop dinners home and you're getting ready to go to bed. Like, you're getting ready to go to jail or kill somebody over oxtails. But he kind of smirked, but he took the plates and he's like, this ain't right. And he left. He thanked me. And we don't know where people's minds are. And we don't know what is going to tick them off. And it was small, but it was a straw that broke the camel's back. You could just tell he was under pressure, and so I think the biggest thing for me, Kristen, is the empathy. I think that's the biggest thing for me. And I think I've gotten soft since I've gotten older, because everything will make me cry. Like a certain movie will come on and it's getting ready to get to that funny part. I'll change the channel. My wife, why you change it? I'm like, I don't want to watch that. I don't want to sit there and cry. So,
well, listen to this. The way out of blame and shame is ultimately to take responsibility. That's part of the process.
Okay.
But one of the main tools to move out of blame and shame is empathy.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the key to me.
Because as I'm sitting here, actually, usually when I'm what I think your superpower is you see people. You see people beyond their circumstances. Because like what I kept hearing from you in the past couple of minutes is they're tired. They're tired of kind of like life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people don't see that.
Yeah.
You see it.
I see it. I feel it. I feel no hope. I feel it. It's like my new drug. When I feel no hope, I'm at it. I'm at it. Like, and if you give me a moment, I am going to almost suffocate you with exhortation and hope. Like, you're going to have to cut me off and say, okay, I get it. I'm not going to do it. I feel, and I know then that God's done what he was going to do with that person. And I'm the guy that doesn't need you to say thank you later. I'm the guy that just wants to see you smiling when you leave me. Because something got in, something got watered, some seed got set. You heard something, some light came on, even if it's flickering. It may not last. You still may do something wrong. You still may end it. I don't know. But for a moment, you had I believe that's a moment of clarity where you're going to give another option to yourself, where you were going to just let things go. Like my wife says, you just don't want to let people go. I'm like, no, not that type of person. You know, if a person's got it all together, they think they got it all together, and they don't want to fool with you anymore. Okay, goodbye. You're good. But when I feel like someone's broken and I feel like they need something and they just can't get over it, they're dealing with something. I did Young Life for a few years. We had the fastest growing Young Life in the country for a little while. They put us in their little magazine and everything. And someone asked me, how is it that you're getting these kids, like these are the under-resourced, gang-affiliated, poor kids, like you are for real urban in Dayton, Ohio with these kids. How are you getting in these kids? And it's because I've helped them to see how superhero-ish they are. I couldn't have survived. How great you think I am in my Jordan sweatsuits and my flip-flops and the big church for Dayton, you know, the big size church and the all this stuff going on and we're feeding and we, you know, I'm cool and I know the rap songs and I rap and I dance and I don't. But man, if I had to grow up like that, I wouldn't have made it. You know how super you are? But I could tell that they were at the end of hoping, like they had no exposure, so they had no dreams, like their dreams were gone. Mm-hmm. And so my job, you know, some people say they're dream makers. I don't know. I don't know if a person can be a dream maker. What I try to be is either a dream producer or a dream builder. So my job is to help you dream again. And if you have a dream, to help you see that we can get to that. Like, let's build on that. Let's build on the fact that you woke up and remember what it is you want to do in life.
Because you can see people.
Well, I appreciate that. I almost sound like the people on the, Sixth Sense.
I see dead people. You're like, I see people. Yeah. You do, though.
Yeah. My son told me one time, you don't see me, Dad. And this was last year. And I told my wife and I told him, I said, you know what? I absolutely see you. And so the fact that you said that today may be prophetic, because I said that to him. I said, you know what's weird? I absolutely see you. Like, I see you. I see it. And I'm starting to know that I see it in people. And so this word of wisdom that God will give me in these moments, not necessarily a word of knowledge. I don't know where you've come from, but I see that there's a journey that God still wants you to take. And let's get on that journey. You didn't meet me, but there's no coincidence in my life. Like, there's no coincidence. I'm not wandering around town. I go to the church. I go to Fosse. I go home. I go to the church. Now my wife takes me to tennis. So now I'm playing tennis again. And so that's my life. I don't do anything. You know, my wife will say, you need some friends. You need to get out. No, I don't. You have no idea what all I've done in my life. I need to rest. When I can rest, I need to rest. I go home. I put on my house shoes. I get into bed. I got a TV room. I got a nice, if somebody comes over, I'm going to the room.
I'm watching General Hospital and Price is Right.
The guiding light. Guiding light. Well, yeah.
So we're towards the end, and I just want, so we call this a full circle moment.
Okay.
When kind of like the hard stuff and the good stuff get integrated, and you have a moment where you're like, yes. I'm holding the paradox and life is good. And I have, not that you'll ever understand why, but there's an understanding. Suddenly, the hard threads are used for good.
Probably walking into, I have 2 office spaces, one in the West Side at the church where it's foundation my work, and then one in Fosse, because she's allowed me to have space there for cares and of course being her consultant. When I see that chair behind the desk and know that at this place, someone's going to say Pastor Mark, and at this place, somebody's going to say Bishop Mark. But knowing that Mark McGuire has a space when God would not have been wrong if it was a headstone. And at some point, it was 419-56061. That's how I was introduced. That's how I was called a child. That's how I got my mail. And that's how I went on my visits.
Nobody saw you.
419-56-061. One day it hit me. I have lived a life to make me lose my name. Full circle. People put a handle on it now. It's not even just Mark. It's Pastor Mark, Bishop Mark, Dr. Mark, Brother Mark. And they don't have to. I don't need it. I don't care. I mean, some people demean you and you laugh at that, but I don't care. But the fact that there's a regard for that, God did that. I was dope fiend Mark. That's who I was. The byproduct was selling the drugs so I could get the drugs. Just so happened I had enough money to get started, and I had a type of family that got me into the type of door, that got me into the type of weight and volume of drugs that, it was just money. But I was no different than the guy walking down the street dirty, getting high. I was getting higher than him. He just didn't have anything to bounce back to. He didn't have a house. He didn't have a family. He didn't have uncles with cars, and all the dope was free. He didn't have that. He didn't have, if I messed up $20,000 worth of drugs, that somebody would say, man, what happened? And I could make up this lie and they'd give me 2 more to fix it. They didn't have that. That's the only difference. I was worse off than they were. And I could see that and couldn't get out. I could see that and couldn't get out.
Until God called you by name.
Till God called me by name. I always say on Poe Avenue, Poe Avenue, face down, while they're pulling off my shirt and pulling down my pants and that lady's foot on my neck, I got free.
Thank you so much for today.
Yes, ma'am.
For sharing.
I feel like I rambled a little bit.
No, it was beautiful. We all ramble a little bit. It's okay. I just feel like.
Don't you do that.
I know, I'm sorry. Because I think that, my heart is for change. And I asked our ladies one time, did a listening circle, and I had them write down, what would you want the police to say to you? And they wrote stuff like, listen to my story, hear me out. Ask me about my kids and how at the level, as a human being level, really that's what we want, right? We want to be seen and we want to be known.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to close this, and I'm just going to speak blessings over you.
Receive it.
And may God just continue to speak your name to you, directly to your heart, and call you more and more to him. And you may know his belovedness. You would know him as a father. And you would just continue to let him hold you. And you just continue to speak boldly. And just God would grow your empathy. And also, you would take care of yourself. And thank you, God, for his wife.
Yeah, thank you, God. She's the most amazing woman. I don't know what all I've come to Jacksonville to do, Kristen. Meet wonderful people like you, get connected, fulfill purpose, obviously. But I'm very grateful to my church family, the Potter's House, Bishop McLaughlin and Lady Narlene. But even as we're growing to know each other, we've only known each other 6 years, and we're going on 5 years of marriage. I have the most incredible wife. She's the, I don't know, I heard somebody say she's the yin to my yang. I don't know if that's the right thing to say, but she balances me.
Yeah.
She's a tough softie, and it just helps to have a suitable helper, especially as a man, a black man in this world right now. And from where I've come from, because there's so many options of destruction that would come at me, that she helps keep me balanced and help me to hear the Holy Spirit. And we're on Ecclesiastes 3 today as a book reading group. that I've started. Bible reading for exhortation, accountability, and discipline is what it stands for. And so time and season for everything. But I think it's verse 11 says he makes everything beautiful in its own time. And so I'm patient that one day I'll be beautiful, and not a beautiful monster, but just beautiful.
I think you're already there. All right. Done.
We're crying.